Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Halloween is right around the corner, so I thought it'd be fun to do my top 10 spooky games to play on Halloween. But even better, I'm gonna be in Salem, Massachusetts, the mecca of Halloween. I'm actually taking the van all the way there just to do this video. Now it's gonna be a mix between studio work to give you some high quality overviews and thoughts like this, but I'm also gonna be at different spots in Salem announcing the games that made this list. Here we go.
Number 10.
Now for this first one, most people don't realize that Salem's actually right on the water. This is not a spooky place, but it's a beautiful place off the beaten path. Just rode the bike all the way over here. It is absolutely gorgeous. This is called Winter Island Park in Salem. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so for number 10 is a cute little abstract game called Boob. Boob. It is an abstract strategy game for 2 players. Now this is based off another game called Boop with less O's. This one is Boob because it's got sort of a ghost involved, but there are cats, of course, and they're Halloween themed, but there's also ghost cats. Now in this game, it's very simple. You're moving your little kittens around, jumping on an actual sort of quilt mattress there. It's actually spongy, great component. And when you place them down, it's gonna boop all the other kittens that's around it, and you're trying to boop the other player's kittens off the bed, and you're trying to boop yours so you get 3 in a row, because once you get 3 in a row, they become a cat. They graduate to being a cat. Now cats are important because if you get 3 cats in a row, you win. So it's really interesting. It's fun. It's got an interesting mix of, there's no luck here. I mean, you're placing it. Now I like this because it's so simple. It's like you just place a piece and then it boops pieces out, but there's a lot of thought involved. It's got a decent amount of depth. It's got a lot of replayability. And then with this version, of course, it's sort of the Halloween themed, but it also has the ghost cat where you can actually scare some of the cats through other cats off the bed. So it adds like sort of an advanced variant to the game. But yeah, this takes the original game that came out not so long ago and just put it in a new theme with a new little advanced variant. And now this is the spooky version, Boob.
Number 9.
All right, here we are at the Witch City Mall a few days before Halloween in Salem. And for this next one, we're gonna be talking about Tricks and Treats from Trick or Treat Studios. Yes, Tricks and Treats was actually Emerson Masucci's first design. He has now become one of the most prolific designers of board gaming. And this is a cute little tuck box card game where you're essentially hiding candy in certain baskets and you know secretly which basket is yours. And if you have the most points at the end by having the most candy in there, you're gonna win. But if other players, they might say which basket they think is yours, and if they get it right, you're eliminated. And so you're trying to be tricky and be a little sly about which basket's yours by trying to put attention on other baskets that they might think is yours. But there's also abilities, and some of the baskets have some special abilities. You can play with a certain amount of these, and it just changes things up. You play with different ones every time, so it just changes how the game plays, but it's pretty simple. You're playing candies down and you're trying to make people think it's yours or not, and you're trying to eliminate other players. You're trying to be the last one standing and of course have the most, or have the most candy at the end there. Cute little game. This was actually redone recently by Trick or Treat Studios, and so new artwork, new things like that. It's back in print. So if you're looking for just a light little game that you can play with kids and very lightly with adults, Tricks and Treats is a good catch.
Number 8.
No, this is not the Castles of Burgundy. It is the Church of St. Peter's, a historical landmark in Salem. And standing in front of this church, this game that we're gonna be talking about is The Night Cage from Smirk and Dagger Games. The next one here, Night Cage, this one is very interesting. This is one of those games where you play it with some dim lights and the candle going and some interesting music, and it's really gonna add to the experience here because in the Night Cage, it's cooperative. It's a cooperative game where you're all trying to light up things and get away from the monsters and get out. And it's interesting because it is cooperative. You're talking about how you're gonna move, but you're moving a little bit at a time, and as you move,
It's gonna light up what you can see. Monsters are gonna be coming out at you. You're gonna have to deal with them. It's a unique experience because it is, even if you play it in daylight, it's still a little bit of a spooky game. I know the artwork's not gory or anything like that, but it's just the idea of like you're in this dark, dingy place. You're trying to light it up a little bit at a time. You're kind of trying to work together, but you're trying to, take care of the monsters, things like that. Try to get out. It's a really unique game. So if you like cooperative games and you're looking for one that's got a little bit of a spooky theme and you can really ham it up with a lot of the ambiance and the candles and stuff and really make it feel like a very top level experience, the Night Cage is one to check out.
Number 7.
So everyone thinks Salem's all about just witches, right? But no. Actually, they have Bit Bar, which is an awesome arcade brewery with old school games, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and all sorts of pinball games. And for the next game, it is Pocket Madness, the little card game with the Cthulhu theme.
Pocket Madness is a rummy-style game for 2 to 4 players, where you can be trying to play melds, at least 3 of the same number or more, and you'll be able to get special abilities when you do so, like taking other turns, discarding cards from other players, giving cards away, because you're trying to get rid of all your cards. When you have these abilities, you gotta find the right time to use them, because you can use them anytime, but if somebody else melds of this number, they can steal the special ability from you. You'll also be trying to run a set from 6 to 12 because everybody gets a Madness Cube, which is bad because the game ends whenever someone gets 10. Whoever has the least is the winner, and every one that's done in that subsequent round will multiply and continue to explode the amount of madness. But the mechanics are simple. You're either taking 1, 2, or 3 cards from the deck that's on the pile, some of them are face down, or you're playing melds, and you're trying to have the least madness when someone gets 10. Yeah, I like Pocket Madness. It's interesting. It's got the Cthulhu theme. That's why it's on sort of the spooky thing here. But it is co-designed by, I think it's co-designed by Bruno Cathala, my favorite designer. Maybe he designed the whole thing. I can't remember. He at least co-designed this. Maybe with Ludovic Malblanc. But this is essentially like a gin rummy style game where you're collecting sets. And you're playing sets down, and you're trying to find the right time to play certain sets. And there's 2 different types of sets, right? You could play one type of set of sort of numbers, but you're also trying to get a run of all of them to cause a lot of madness. You're trying to use the abilities. You play this certain set, and then you get this little ability card that you might want to use. And you might want to use it strategically, but you might need to play it faster than you want to, because if another player plays that set, they get to take that ability card from you. The game's played over multiple rounds, so you can screw up once or twice and you still play in the game. It's not player elimination or anything like that. But the game has these big, large cards with some nice artwork on them, even though it's sort of darker art, but it looks really nice. And it's just a fun little card game that again brings back the classics of sort of gin rummy, but does it in an interesting way, and doing 2 different types of sets and doing abilities and things like that. And I like it a lot, so that's why it's on this list.
Number 6.
In downtown Salem, for the next game on this list, we're talking about Gloomy Graves.
Gloomy Graves is a spatial strategy card game for 2 to 4 players, where you'll be trying to build large grave sites of different types, like dragons, goblins, cyclops, pixies, and unicorns. Each round, you'll be placing a card into a communal grave site that all players will be contributing to. You'll also be creating your own private crypt in front of you that can be as large as a 3x3 grid. You're trying to build those large contiguous sections of different types using grave diggers as wild, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus the 7 of them in the communal graveyard gives you 12, which allows you to score 6 points at the end of the game. Or you can push your luck and try to get 3 more, having 15 to get a whopping 10 points, but somebody else might take that before you. And since you can only score each grave site once, after you score it, you'll be cutting it off from other players in the communal graveyard. And at the end, you'll also be scoring bonuses for how many of the scorecards you got. Yeah, Gloomy Graves is a fun little thing. As you can see from the artwork, it's it's got that spooky horror theme there. And the thing that makes this game really stand out is because you're building a communal sort of grave site. Or tableau, if you will, and you're building that with cards, and you're building up certain colors to be contiguous, but you're also building up your own, and you're trying to combine those to score. And then once you score, you're trying to cut that off from other people in the communal because you don't want them to be able to beat your score. It's got a little bit of the game of chicken. It's got a little bit of game of race, a little bit of push your luck. Like, oh, do you want to keep trying to build that so you can get the highest points? But if someone else takes a lower one and then cuts it off, it's gonna be really hard to get that. A lot of things to think about for how simple this is. It's like play a card in the middle somewhere, play a card in your own grid, try to build things up, try to score. It's a relatively quick, small, light game, but it's got a decent amount of thought there, and that's Gloomy Graves. That's why it made this list.
Number 5.
So Salem, Massachusetts is where Parker Brothers was, that made Monopoly and some of these other really historical older games, here at the PBD Essex Museum in Salem. All right, next on the list here for the top 10 most spooky games from Salem. Right now we're talking about Dark Stories, also known as Black Stories in some editions.
Yeah, this used to be called Dark Stories, and I think it's been renamed to Black Stories, so you may find one or either version, and there's a lot of them. There's like many different volumes of these, and the reason why this is on this list is because of they're sort of horror stories, if you will, but they're mysteries. And the reason why it's on this list is because sometimes you just want to sit around the couch and play a game with like a bunch of people, or sometimes you're driving to a Halloween party or a Halloween event and you want to play something on the road. And this is that, where you can literally, one person can be the person that knows the answer, and they're fielding the questions from everybody else in the car or on the couch. It's very, you could play it pretty much anywhere, and I like that. That's one reason why it's on this list. But the mysteries, some of them are better than others, but they are sort of darkish, but they are also, some of them are like, oh yeah, if you knew like when you know the answer and you're looking at the thing, you're like, oh, this is so easy. But like you typically have to think in a different way, and you're trying to ask these questions that are just yes or no. And it's really interesting. You're just trying to solve the mystery with questions that can only be answered with yes or no, and you're trying to get down to the answer. And it's just a fun little thing, and the fact that you can play it in all sorts of different situations is what helps it make this list.
Number 4.
For the next game in downtown Salem, we're talking about for the top 10 spooky games in Halloween. What a good, it's gotta be Michael Myers, right? It is the game of Halloween.
Yeah, this Halloween, this game is just coming out like right about now. Now this is based on a popular game by the same designer, Emerson Matsushita. We talked about him earlier in this list about Tricks or Treats. It's based off of one of his early games called Spectre Ops, which is a hidden movement game. Now this is not literally just reskinned Spectre Ops. This is a different game. It uses a lot of the DNA and a lot of the sort of mechanisms and aspects of that, but it's definitely also many parts are different. Now in this case, one player is going to play Mike Myers, and he wins if he lasts enough rounds without being killed, or kills a certain amount of victims. Now the victims win if they kill Mike Myers, or they find the key for one of the 2 specific cars and they're able to escape. So this is one of those hidden movement games where someone's playing Mike Myers, and you won't know where they're moving until they sort of show up, or until they sort of get in your line of sight. And then he has to come on the board, but as soon as he moves out of there, you don't know where he's at till the next time someone sees him, or next time he comes up, and things like that. So now the victims have all these different ability cards that they can use. Myers has different abilities that he can use. So if you like sort of that cat and mouse, it's spooky, but it's also tense. If you want that tense horror film feeling, in a board game that has a decent amount going on. This is probably the heaviest game on this list, but it's not a heavy game per se. But if you're looking for that horror theme with the Halloween IP and matching great mechanics from a great designer with it, that's Halloween.
Number 3.
All right, I just got out of the Salem Witch Museum. It's right before Halloween. And for this next one, it is going to be One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
One Night Ultimate Werewolf is a hidden identity game where players take on the roles of werewolves, villagers, or special characters with powers. Most of you will be on the village team and will be working together to find at least one werewolf hiding among you. But the werewolf team is doing their best to avoid being caught by claiming to be a member of the village team. Roles are dealt out secretly to each player. And the app will walk through the rest of the night phase, having certain players open their eyes and use their special powers in secrecy. Then the players will open their eyes and work together to find out who's really on the village team or werewolf team by deciphering who is telling the truth and who isn't. Yeah, One Night Ultimate Werewolf has always been sort of one of my favorites. It's great for big gatherings. A lot of times you're having big, Halloween parties, and so this is great for those. And you know, it's got the moon and the werewolves and the howling, and it has sort of that spooky vibe to it. But in the end, it's you're just trying to figure out who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, what happened when our eyes were closed. You know, it's like little bite-sized 5-minute games that you'll never play just once. You'll play it over and over and over and over again. You'll start throwing in other roles, and you know, plays big groups, but it still plays with 5. You know, all the way up to I think 10. And so it's great for those Halloween parties, you know, costume parties. But it's one of those things that you just kind of pull out. It's pretty easy to teach, but a lot of it's played sort of above the table. And it's always fun to, you know, to see the reactions of people's faces when they really figure out what really happened. It's just a fun sort of social, this is, you know, a social deduction game that is one of the best still to this day, One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Number 2.
Okay, here I'm at the Witch House in Salem from 1692. It is the only house still standing originally that was tied to the Salem witch trials. A wealthy judge lived here, and I just toured it. Really cool. And out in front of the Witch House, what we got here for number 2 in Salem for the top 10 games for Halloween is Mysterium.
Now, Mysterium is sort of like a cooperative version of Clue, if you ever pick Clue, because each person has their own solution. A person, a place, and a weapon. And one player is that ghost, and the ghost is trying to get the other people to guess their person, place, and location, but they can't talk. They're only doing it by giving them interesting looking cards that have some whimsical, sometimes spooky artwork. Now essentially the thematics of the game is you're in this mansion where a murder took place, and you're doing a seance, and the beings are giving this person visions, and that person is the ghost that's giving the vision cards to the players. So that's why it's on the spooky list here. But essentially it's one player knowing all the solutions, each person's separate solution, and they're passing out these interesting cards to try to get them to guess. But it's never like a sure thing. It's always sort of, you know, a little bit of this, it might be this, it might match with this, and you know, you're trying your best to do so over a certain amount of rounds. And then if you get all the way to the end and everyone has gotten their person, place, their thing, then they get to like a final round where they're really trying to figure out whose vision actually was the real one. So it's really cool. It's a cool theme. It's not heavy mechanically. You know, you're just passing cards out and people are talking together trying to figure out what card does this go with, what weapon does this go with, things like that. It's very easy to play. It's a little bit spooky, and it still is one of my favorite sort of cooperative games, and that's Mysterium.
Number 1.
Okay, for the number 1, I'm at TripAdvisor's number 1 thing to do in Salem, which is visit the House of Seven Gables, made popular by Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel of the same name back in the mid-1800s. Now, of course, being in Salem and doing this top 10 spooky Halloween games from Salem, number 1 game is called New Salem.
Before I get to the moment you've been waiting for, I want to let you know that Game Toppers 4.0 Kickstarter recently launched. Well, they'll have 10 new thematic game mats, including Vincent Dutray's Lost Worlds Jungle Mat, and new accessories and storage solutions, along with custom thematic art on rails of the Game Toppers, and they're giving away the new Young Sherlock Game Topper package, which is great as a movable coffee table, children's gaming table, and for puzzles. Scan the QR code or go to GameToppersLLC.com to enter and win now. New Salem is a social deduction game for 3 to 8 players, where you'll secretly either be a Puritan on the good side or a witch on the bad side, but nobody knows who anyone is. You're going to be drafting cards and playing them in front of you, sometimes adding good things like hope and bad things like despair. And if there's too much despair at the end of the game, depending on the amount of players, only the witches are available to win, otherwise the Puritans, but only one player can win. And you'll be scoring points by matching icons on the cards you've played with ones that are on your character and collecting a full set like this one. But each round, one player will be the constable, and they can use hope cubes to enact different events like putting players on trial, cleaning for despair, and even showing your character card to others. And you're trying to correctly place witches on trial, because at the end of the game, if you're correct, the good guys have a better chance of winning. But if you wrongly put a Puritan on trial, then the witches have a much better chance of winning. But even though it's a social deduction game, it's a drafting game at heart as well, trying to draft for the right cards for your strategy. Yeah, well, being in Salem and having this be one of my favorite sort of social deduction games, this could not be number 1, the New Salem 2nd Edition. This game is excellent. It always has been. 2nd Edition is so, they fixed a lot of the issues I had with the 1st edition, but it's really cool because essentially it is a card drafting game and a tableau building game. You're drafting cards, you're placing them down, You know, sometimes they're good cards, sometimes they're bad cards. Every time you place a card that's bad, everyone's like, you're a witch, you're a witch. And then the events come and then people are peeking at your cards, but then you don't know if you can trust them. And you're activating all these different abilities and you're like, what's going on? You're trying to figure out who are the witches, who are not. I like this. It's great with all player counts, but this is one of the few games that plays really well in a social deduction environment with even 3 players, where it's possible that there is no witch. And you might be playing cards that look like you're bad, but you're really not, and you come to find out nobody's bad. You can put people on trial. There's all these different events that you can do to try to figure out who is who. It's interesting because it matches like sort of a game of drafting cards, playing cards, and trying to collect sets and get points. But you can't win unless you're on sort of like the winning side, whether the good side or the bad side, depending on how much despair or hope there is in the village. Such a clever game. It's fantastic. It's got that spooky vibe. And you can play it at low player counts and higher player counts. This one is probably not the heaviest one on this list, but it's a heavier game versus some of the other ones on here. But New Salem 2nd Edition, definitely the #1 spooky game to play at Halloween, and definitely in Salem. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games by helping you find the next one you love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table into a high-quality gaming solution, but they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with over 20 styles of thematic game mats in 11 different sizes from notable board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and real cool accessories, experience what thousands of other gamers enjoy by upgrading every game you play with a Game Topper system. Save hundreds of dollars on Game Topper package deals that are in stock now for immediate shipping at GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.